You are listening to the Mark Guzman Podcast Experience. The Richmond Craneway was once used to manufacture Ford trucks, and during World War II was a hub for shipbuilding. Today, though, it plays host to the Richmond Craneway Craft Fair. For 47 years, the Craneway Craft Fair has provided local and amateur Bay Area artists a place to showcase their talents and work of art for all to enjoy. None of this would be possible without our guest today, who for the past 29 years has made this craft fair possible. So please welcome to the show, Jan Etre. So I want to welcome my guest, Jan Etre, onto the podcast. And I'm excited for this one because we have a lot of content, a lot to talk about in a very short amount of time. So let's just jump right into it and get started. How did you become interested in art?
I think it was in my bones when I was born. Like, art has just been like breathing for me. I've always made things. And in fact, somebody asked me once, when did you start sewing? Because I sew like crazy. And I looked back in my life and I realized I made my own doll clothes. So even before I had a conscious mind or the front lobe of my brain was developed, I was making things. So I was born a maker.
And how did that develop over the years? Do you still do art to this day?
Yes, very active, very, very active. And it's a spiritual practice now, as well as a physical, mental, emotional. It just kind of ties everything together. To be an artist is to live with the blood pumping through my veins, with every pulse is meaningful, because I can always get back to my art. I can always use it as a reference. It can always be about process, and process is really what keeps me oriented in the present moment.
It's very meditative, isn't it?
It's meditative. And I love it because it does end. I mean, projects end and then you start a new one, or you have 10 projects going at once, some of us. And materials are really fascinating to me. The making of something out of other materials. And that's also what I do in my career as the promoter of crafts shows, is I honor that whole creative process that artists and craftspeople have. They live it, they breathe it all day long. They've made these life choices. This is what they want to do, and they work with materials because it means something to them, and it helps them breathe. It helps them be healthy. It helps them be happy. And that's vital, really. It's to the core of people's being that they make their art. It's fraught with meaning for me.
Yeah, I read a book by Tom Campbell. Not sure if you're aware of who that is, but he is a physicist and he wrote a book called My Big Toe. It's basically his theory about consciousness, about life and everything. He spoke about meditation and how you can really fall into a meditative state while being consciously awake. And he says a perfect example of this is when people are doing art, when people are really focused on their craft. And he even used an example of Buddhist monks that will live for 2 or 3 years in their lifetime at the top of a mountain. They will walk every single week down to the village in bare feet and walk right back up, and they're meditating the entire time. They're doing that whole process. So it was very interesting how he explained meditation and how that falls in. And so I always like to ask artists and people that are very creative how their art falls into. Now, do you meditate on a daily basis, like separately? Or?
I have been into meditation lately. I find my meditation is I take a bike ride for an hour a day, and I get very free in my mind. I get to let go. It's like I'm letting go of stuff as I ride my bike. And I ride on the path, the Ohlone pathway, from my house in Berkeley up to the El Cerrito del Norte station and back. And it's repetitive, which is meditation. And it's liberating because I don't have to think about anything except riding my bike. So I get to be very present in the moment. I heard something about meditation that I really liked. That is that meditation lights up every part of your brain.
It does. There's a really good study that was done by, and I believe it was Harvard Business School. So Harvard did this study where they looked at the neuron connections inside of your brain and saw how active they became when you went into a full meditative state. And your brain becomes 100% active as far as firing neurons
Mm-hmm.
when you go into a meditative state, which is, you would think it's a complete opposite
Right.
because you're trying to calm yourself down. You're
Mm-hmm.
trying to eliminate thoughts and just be in the moment. It's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting
It's
study.
very interesting. And about artists, you've heard about the right brain and left brain.
Yep.
Okay. So the right brain is the creative, and the left brain is the analytical, more or less. And being in the flow that the artist is in, they're in that creative right brain mode, um, which supplants the need for rational, un, it, uh, analytical thinking. So I can feel it when it's happened in my body, when I'm in my flow and in my right brain. My analytical brain and the critic, they're not in the room. And the flow is, it's so, I'm in such present time that I'm completely engaged in what I am, and I'm happy. Like there's a joyfulness. And I think that's the meditation too, because my brain is really lit up. But I've just bifurcated the brain into right and left, and that's not what we were talking about with meditation. So I don't understand that 100%, but it does help me to think in those terms.
Yeah, that just fascinates me because I'm in the world of business every single day,
Mm-hmm.
and I know how easy it is to forget about trying to live the life in the moment.
Mm.
Problems arise, and many times you have to step back and just remind yourself that 99% of all the problems that happen don't matter.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, if you really think about
That's
it,
really great.
problems that happened last week don't matter anymore.
Yeah, it's true. And
Yeah,
also, our control over issues and items and problems and circumstances are really, it's the best thing to do is to let them go and let whatever you have faith in take over for you. So there's forces in the universe that are making the sun rise in the morning. That's not me. And making the trees grow. That's not me. It's like I can really give it over to that force. And when I get into that flow, I'm back again. I'm back again. So it's the forcing of solutions and problem solving and getting things the way we want and grasping. It's those cause suffering, in fact, when in fact we've done the work. You've done the work. Like if there's something to be done, it will come to you and you can do it. And it's amazing to me. Like we learn, one of the most wonderful things about staying alive and getting older is we learn more and we learn more. And I've learned to just how to let go. Like I've been organizing events for 30 years. And at the beginning of my career, I tried to tightly control everything. I had to do it. I was a control freak. And it got done, but at the cost of my serenity, my stress level. Now, I'm so much more aware of what needs to be done, when the deadlines are, and I get the work done, and I have much more confidence in a positive outcome.
I love that you say that because that was one of my problems when I first got into the business
Mm-hmm.
of what I do now. I'm a property manager. I've been doing this now 14 years. And one of the easiest problems to deal with, well, my problem was trying to do everything myself.
That's right.
You know, I know how to do it
Mm-hmm.
the right way.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start to learn how to delegate and you
Mm-hmm.
start building a team like I have now,
Right.
it's so much more rewarding and
Mm-hmm.
so much easier on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you would probably agree with the fact that you meet so many more interesting people that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more fulfilling.
Yeah. I'm going into this event at the Craneway Pavilion. It's December 16th and 17th, and it's a craft show, and I've been organizing it for 29 years. And I know hundreds of people. I know the artists, I know the building people, I know my crew, and I get so much joy from all these relationships. And the people at KPFA Radio, it's my world is very full and very rich right now. I'm feeling very replete with in the context of my career choice right now. I'm blessed.
That's amazing.
Uh-huh.
Well, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
I mean, very few people really get to that point, and it's unfortunate because everyone can.
I hope that everyone can. I'm not sure. I mean, people have problems, like a health problem might come up or a family problem might come up. Something might take them out, of that cycle of joy. And we have to be very spiritually disciplined in order to re-enter that arena of spiritual joy. It has to be a dedication. It has to be something that I give to a power greater than myself so that I can be right sized. So it's not all my ego. It's not all about me. It's not all about what I can do. It's like I'm constantly giving it away. I have to give it away. That's the reciprocity of the relationships that you're describing that are rich and rewarding.
Yeah. Now, your art today that you
Mm-hmm.
personally
Mm-hmm.
do you do painting? Do you do ceramic art? What's your art look like today?
I'm totally into textiles right now.
Okay.
I am over the top. So this year, I had the opportunity to travel to India. I had never gone to Asia. I'd always wanted to go to India. And a tour led by an artist and tour director and author, Yoshiko Wada. Yoshiko Wada is a Berkeley person. She lives in the hills in Berkeley. She's been leading tours, textile tours, for years. And I just opened up. Every cell in my body was just like open. I was in India. It was magical. We went from textile venue to textile venue, learning how organic cotton is grown now, which is a big movement, and how indigo is used, which is an ancient plant that dyes your blue jeans. And then the projects she's done over the past 25 years in India with Japanese textile techniques. We were exposed to that. We went to workshops. So I came back, I was completely lit up. And ever since then, while I have always been a sewer, now I'm a dyer and a sewer. So I'm dyeing cloth in indigo and I'm making garments out of it and and accessories like purses.
So even your own style of art is now changed because of that
I
experience.
let go. I let go. When I was in India, my motto evolved. It was go slow and let go. And the other thing is let it change me. Let it change me. Like change is inevitable, but resisting change or welcoming change is a choice we have. And I put myself in a circumstance where I realized, welcome change. And since then, I've been in this, for me, rarefied environment of heightened creative impulse. And it's informing my whole life in ways that are just very rich and gratifying.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, in your opinion, do you feel everyone has that creativity inside of them, or do you think there are creative people and then there's more analytical people?
Well, I think there's probably the latter is true. Um, I think there's something for everyone. It's discovering those gems inside of ourselves. It's being nurtured and knowing how to take care of ourselves. I think self care comes first. So if I eat well and rest well and move well, my core value will become manifest. So we have to take care of ourselves in order to manifest whatever talent we have, whether it's analytical or creative or both. In my case, I'm blessed. I have both. Like there's no way that I could organize the events that I organize if my analytical brain wasn't working well.
So if the engine and transmission are running well, kept up well, you're going to have a good car.
It's let's do the car analogy. You got to take care of it, and then it will take care of you.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. I'd like to live to 100 if, I don't want to lose my mind, but, and I want to
Well,
be
medical
loved.
advances the way they're going, it's very possible.
It's very possible.
The
But the thing
National
is,
Association of Realtors came out
right?
with a study that the children being born today
Mm-hmm.
will have a chance to live to 150 at the rate of medical advances. That's unbelievable.
So it is unbelievable. I mean, there's a lot we could talk about medicine. I have mixed feelings about the ethics of medicine anymore and trying to keep people alive as long as they can. And then the quality of life goes down. And as long as the quality of life is up, and I won't get to choose this. We're just having a hypothetical conversation
Yeah.
here. My life's going to go the way it goes. I'm going to go out the way I go out. Like I know that. But it does give you pause for thought to think about these bigger issues, which as I get older, I'm 66, I think about them more because the older we get, the more spiritual we become. We start to slowly but surely drop our bodies and our minds become more focused on what's next and how to go out the way I want to go out, which is gracefully. I want to go out lovingly And that means I've got to cultivate that now. That has to be my everyday life today in order for it to be my everyday life whenever I go. So it's living.
I love that what you just said. How
Thank
you
you.
yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Now, have you lived in the Bay Area your entire life?
No, I was born in New York in this Italian Catholic enclave in Westchester County. My mom and dad had 5 daughters. When I was 11 years old, they picked up the family and moved us to St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Huge culture shift,
I bet.
huge acculturation challenge. We didn't know what was going on, but it was gorgeous there. I mean, beautiful place. The Virgin Islands, absolutely Caribbean. The culture was amazing because it's basically an African heritage culture, like a former slave culture, but now like celebrations abound there. Music is incredible. They make rum on the island, so there's a lot of that. You know, a lot of
I've
partying.
had Caribbean rum
You
before.
have
Yeah,
Crucian rum.
I went to Jamaica for a few
Uh huh.
weeks, and they make the same thing. They make
Yeah.
their own rum,
Yeah.
and I have to. They make their own rum and then use that into fruit punches and
Yeah.
drinks,
Yeah.
and they're extremely
They're
delicious.
incredibly
Very
delicious.
dangerous too, because you
Yeah, they
can
are.
easily drink too much.
I mean, I don't drink anymore, but I had fun when I was younger with the rum, and the rum is tastes fine any time of year. You know that song, right?
Yeah.
The Harry Belafonte. Um, so that was really big for me. Really, really big for me. You know, I moved from a very secure, kind of entrenched culture in New York to one of kind of a reckless abandon because it was not what I would it wasn't civilized like the United States are
So, what was the
civilized.
cause for that move?
My parents were adventuresome, and my dad and mom didn't really have the opportunity. It was right after the World War II, and there were a lot of people looking for work, and he had a hard time finding work. So somebody offered him to move down there and help develop some land, and he said yes. So he moved us down there. That happened to fall through kind of quickly after we moved. But my dad was very enterprising and had a family to care for, so he got involved in the food industry. That helped keep food on the table. And then he went from there to being a restaurateur, and so he made it work. And my mom was amazing. So she worked in the schools as we were coming up in the schools, and they took care of us. You know, they did a good job.
And when did you move to the Bay Area? What year was that?
72, 1972. So it's been a while.
So then, how was that cultural shift going from the Virgin Islands to the Bay Area?
I was pretty much done with the Virgin Islands by the time I was out of high school. It it was so the islands are so small. They were too small for me. I needed something bigger, and I was very blessed to have met my future husband when we were in a university without walls situation in England. I got off the island. I got myself into this university without walls situation. I was in England. I met my future husband. He was from Mill Valley.
Okay.
So we migrated back to California from England. We were young. We were hippies. We were craftspeople. You know, we were part of that generation of makers back to the land, anti-Vietnam War. I mean, there was a lot going on in the 60s and 70s for our generation, and we made our mark, and it's still there. It's still there,
I went
obviously.
to, sorry to cut you off there,
Hmm.
but I went to Portugal earlier this year
Mm.
and I spent 2 weeks there with my girlfriend. And a few of the nights we spent it with this professor. I mean, he's retired now and volunteers his time, but he was a professor of, and I should know the name of the university. It's a 700-year-old university in Coimbra, Portugal. And we sat with him, and he lived for a portion of his life in his late teens to early 20s here in the Bay Area during that same period. And he says it was the best time of his life, so memorable with everything going on and the entire, I mean, you had civil rights movement, just everything. That was the best time, and he loves to talk about it. And so, yeah, that's extremely memorable time
Just
for
look at
many
the
people.
different genres of music that were developing in that
Yep.
time, and they were expressions of the culture. So yeah, it was terribly rich, really amazing. And a lot of people were not going to do what their parents had done, and that was us. We were different, and we were different like so many other millions of kids that were different, and that's the cultural revolution of that time, and that's what gave birth to crafts fairs. Ours started in 1970, right then and there, right? So it's 47 years old this year. I've been involved with it for a long time because I used to exhibit at the fair. And then 29 years ago, I became the promoter of the event or the producer of the event. So crafts fairs have been my life. And the people watching them grow and grow older and have children and have grandchildren, and then new people coming up, and the way materials are used and are changing, and what's hot and happening right now, and how that's changed over the decades. It's a fun ride. It's been an amazing ride, and I'm blessed to have been, like, to answer your question, blessed to have landed in California. When I landed here, I knew I was home because California was open enough for me to express myself or to live my life or to find myself. California is a very permissive environment, especially back in the 70s. So it worked for me.
It's amazing. Now, you did an apprenticeship in England, correct?
That was where we learned leatherwork and ceramics,
Okay.
right? And that was with British craftspeople in this intentional crafts community, which was part of this University Without Walls that we went to for a few years. And what I mean by University Without Walls, we weren't in classrooms. We didn't have teachers. It was non-structured and non-traditional because both Kirk, my husband, and myself were not scholastic achievers. So what do you do with young people who are not scholastic achievers? And the money was there for us to go to college for both of us. And our parents helped us decide that this is like the best next step for us. So off we went. So we were
That
vagabonds.
must have been a very forward-thinking university at that time.
It was, and it was started by the Friends, the Quakers.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. The Quakers led the civil rights movement in a lot of ways, the women's suffragette movement. The Quakers were there doing the hard work, not knowing what the rewards were going to be or when they were going to come. I mean, the Quakers are still like very dedicated and amazing. So that's very forward thinking, very progressive.
Yeah. I mean, if I think even today, if you told someone that you were going to go to a university that had no classes, no structure, they would look at you like you're crazy. You,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah,
more open today,
yeah.
but
There
yeah,
are
that's
schools
amazing
now that
for
have
back
blended
then.
the two together nicely. I think there's that school in Washington State that people love. It's a blend of self-determining and then offering people resource. So that's what's important for young people is to be offered resources that they can learn what they're passionate about and they can grow relationships with other people in the context of college, which I think is important if you're lucky enough to go. I never graduated from college. It just didn't work for me at that time in my life. Then the opportunity, the door closes and off you go. You're on to the next part of your life. So that was fine with me in a way. Yeah. Mixed feelings about that. Yeah.
So 29 years
Mm-hmm.
as working with the craft fair. Now, have you always been the promoter for the full 29 years?
Yes. Now the show is 47 years old. I've been producing it for 29 this year. Yeah.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
yeah.
Yeah, every year's different. Every year's it's about the wheel, as the wheel turns. Just like you live your life 1 year at a time. Your birthday comes and you start off again, around you go. And it's the same, but it's different, right? And you try to do a better job and you grow in knowledge and you have more resources and you develop your programs. It's like that. Happens every year.
I would
And
imagine just seeing all the different people that show up, the audience, the attendees, just to see the entire variety change every single year. And I'm sure you've seen people even grow and then they bring their own kids.
yeah.
Same thing with the artist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And actually what changes the demographic is moving the venue. So this is our fourth year at the Craneway Pavilion. And before that, for 17 years, we were at the Concourse Exhibition Center at 8th and Brannan in San Francisco. So we got out of San Francisco and we moved to Richmond, and we doubled our gate the first year.
Wow.
It just blew all our minds. We thought, oh my God, we're moving to this remote location. Like, who's going to come? We had no idea.
I'm telling people, Richmond is about to, I mean, it's already growing really big, but it's about to explode on a huge scale because there's wineries, beer makers that I've been interviewing on the podcast that are starting up here in Richmond, and so many new business and startups coming up here.
Well, the property's here. And now I think they're going to put a ferry in right there at the Craneway. And then I think the issue is going to be land use, don't you? In terms of residential housing, either high end or low end or a mix of the two, and where and how. And think, how do you grow a community? I think that's a big issue, and probably the city council deals with that on a day-to-day basis.
They do.
It's important. It's important.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you doubled the very first year.
Yep.
That's amazing.
And just be in the Craneway. It's an amazing experience to be inside.
There's a lot of rich history there too.
Yeah, there is.
Just being the old Ford factory.
Yeah. And then the Rosie the Riveter Visitor Center right next door.
Yeah.
You know, Betty Soskin, you should have her in here. She's the oldest living tour for the national parks tour guide. She's 94. And she works at Rosie the Riveter. She's a great interview.
We had Marsha Mathers from Rosie the Riveter on our podcast at the very beginning, but that would be a good guest.
Nice for you.
We'll have to reach out to her. That'd be great.
I just saw her on Facebook again today, so she's wonderful.
So how did the Richmond Craft Fair originally start? Who were the founders? How did that all come about?
I think, KPFA radio was born in 1949 and by a bunch of leftist radicals, and then as we have discussed, the Cultural Revolution of the 60s and 70s birthed all these back to the earth people who wanted to be self-sufficient and make things. And I think it probably just exploded like everything else was exploding. The music, the culture, the politics, it was all just blossoming. And Telegraph Avenue started back then in Berkeley, and probably there were exhibitors and vendors on the street in Telegraph way back when, people who were, again, making their living with their hands. So eventually somebody moved some people indoors, That's how it started. And then set a date, and then made it be a fundraiser for KPFA, because it has always been a fundraiser for KPFA. The largest off-air fundraiser of the year is the Crafts Fair.
Wow.
So that's been since 1970. So the legacy continues. Yeah.
So how much have you seen it change yourself over the last 29 years?
Life is so different now, right? Technology came in, that changed everything, right?
So I would love to talk about a little bit about technology, because I am a bit of a tech geek.
Yeah.
And how has technology changed the craft fair?
Well, so what are you going to spend your money on? Are you going to buy a new computer, or are you going to go to a crafts fair and buy some beautiful glassware, for instance? So once technology came in, there was a pull for people to indulge their minds in other ways. And technology is very seductive. Like, we want this stuff. It tickles our brains. Like, we want our brains tickled like this. We want the cell phones. We want it all, right? Because it feels good. So it's quick and fast. It's fast. Crafts are slow. So there's this contrast between the slow food movement, for instance. It's where organic food came out of that. Natural materials. Technology is not natural materials, okay? It's the exact opposite. It's all the plastics. It's all the, So it's really, really different. It's not Amazon.com. Crafts fairs are very local, very personal, very warm. I look at the Apple store, and I love Apple. I got nothing against Apple. Well, I probably do if I thought about it, but just for the sake of this conversation, Apple's got a very cold light when you go in the store. So technology I see is very cold and art I see as more warm. So it's good for your head. I mean, we're living in the here and now. I think we should make the most of what is happening here. And I think at the end of the day, what warms my heart are handmade things, and this is true for a lot of people. Now, you need your technology to get your game on. I get that. And
Like companies like Etsy. A lot of people make handmade items and sell them on Etsy.
that's a nice blend of technology and art because Etsy works. I mean, the internet works. I mean, I hope it stays unregulated, and I don't have confidence that it will, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what other changes have you seen over the years besides technology?
Well, there's trends in crafts and art. There's a lot of technology that came up around photography, for instance. Photographers could have their work mounted on metal. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I have not.
It's incredible. It's got this glow to it. So that's because of laser printing. And then also there's ways of adapting your photography to canvas that is a printing process. So all of a sudden photographers were showing up at shows with their art printed on canvas and stretched as if it were a painting. So that was a trend. It was huge, still is big. So these trends happen. Like weaving might be at the peak of its career. A lot of people weaving, and I'll get an overabundance of applicants in weaving. And then 5 years from then, not so much. So these trends happen. Wood had a huge surge in the 29 years. Glass had a huge surge. Jewelry is always at the top. Jewelry is incredible. Like apparently we can't have enough, right? And
Okay.
it's all so different. Like jewelry, when you look at it, are basically little sculptures. They're all little mini sculptures that people are wearing. And as such, the variety is endless. So there's a huge variety of materials, huge variety of techniques, and
And it hits to the core of who you are when you wear it.
identity.
It's your style.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, what's the trend that you're seeing now for this year?
Ceramics have always been a rich source of expression for the artist because clay is completely plastic. It's totally pliable. It'll do whatever your hands want it to do. And then you fire it, and it's vitreous, which means it's like a stone. It doesn't absorb water anymore. It's self-contained, and it'll last forever. I mean, that is just so totally cool. So I see the trends in ceramics have changed, the styles, but it's still very much a coveted medium. We have a lot of ceramic artists in the show, and they'll all do well because people love to live with handmade ceramics, you know? And then there's the textiles. Again, there's always interesting things happening in the world of textiles because people are developing and changing and innovating and creating. And textiles really lend themselves, as clay does, to being a really creative medium.
So I would assume at the craft fair or a craft fair, there's food.
Mm-hmm.
Is there music going on?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a full blown craft fair. It's a festival basically.
Yeah, it's a fair that you don't even have to pay to park at the Craneway. We get the parking is free, which is incredible.
What's that admission?
$12 general and $8 senior or disabled, and youth are free. So general admission is 18 to 64. We run a free shuttle from the Richmond BART station back and forth all day, both days. So because we run out of parking spaces, we fill that place up. It is full.
It's amazing.
It is. It's just like a self-control in how many people are in the building. So yeah, it is amazing. The food will be phenomenal. It's a Richmond company, GDC Kitchen. They're minority, veteran, and women owned, and the food will be phenomenal. And the entertainment will be low key in the area of the food concession. Some jazz, some bluegrass, some world music, some fiddling. I mean, it's a mix, eclectic, and that'll be awesome. And then we also have some nonprofit organizations in the show, and they're very important. They help further the mission of KPFA, as this whole event does. People actually love to support the nonprofits that come to the fair, so there's a feel-good element about that. Amnesty International comes to mind. They're there every year, and they do incredible work in the world. So
So I love that it's not it's mainly a fundraiser for KPFA,
Hmm.
but they allow other nonprofits to come in and also fundraise.
Yes, that's true.
That's
That's
amazing.
KPFA is a big umbrella organization. It's like a community center, and there are many different programmers, very different focuses on what the programming is about. Um, it's consider it like a gallery with a bunch of different artists hanging their work in the gallery. That's what KPFA radio is. It gives the programmers the opportunity to delve into their art of programming about the subjects that are intensely interesting to them. So in that regard, I parallel KPFA with what I do at the crafts fair, because I'm like a gallery uh, artist, I mean, a gallery mentor for the artists. And they come in and hang whatever they do and to an appreciative public. So that's,
Now, during the actual festival, what are you doing?
I'm kind of running around. Yeah. There's always something to do. And plus, I want to visit with people. And but I do have a crew that comes in and does operations for the weekend, and so they're going to take care of all the on the ground stuff. Got a security company coming in. I got all these people, all the component parts that you don't really see.
Hmm.
They're working, right? It's the backstory, right? What you really see as the upfront is the artists. That's what you're there for. That's what it's about. It's a fundraiser for KPFA, but this is how people make their living. They're making their living selling their work. These fairs are how they make their living. So it's got to work for them.
Okay, so this fair is not simply just a showcase of work,
Hmm.
but they're selling.
Absolutely. It's a marketplace. It's like you were in Portugal. Did you go to any open air markets?
There were a few, and
Yeah.
we walked by them, and yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Uh-huh. It's like ancient. You can go back in antiquity, and there's the Medina or the souk, or the place where people gather and they barter or trade or buy, or look at the camels or look at the, the wool, whatever they're looking at. People come to market. It's how human beings interact with each other. So this is an old model, old, tried and true.
Yeah, in Portugal, it was interesting because they had those type of markets, and they also had those markets for food.
Hmm.
And it was interesting to see all these different food venues come together and have their own food market.
Hmm.
Same thing,
So they're not wholesale. It's not like going to a farmer's market. It's retail food.
correct?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm hungry.
Yeah, yeah, and their market, every single vendor had wine to buy,
Wow.
and the wine over there is so cheap too. It's
Huh.
amazing.
Huh.
I mean, $3-4 for an entire bottle.
Well.
Yeah.
Huh.
So let's talk about the art. What's some of your favorite artists that will be? Well, actually, you mentioned something just a few minutes ago about applicants.
Mm-hmm.
Do you screen every single applicant? Do
Mm-hmm.
you accept everyone?
Mm-mm.
Are there any disqualifications?
There are, because the work has to be original and of a high creative. So we do a jury, and we put limits on certain categories. Jewelry has a limit because we get a lot more applications for jewelry than we can accept into the show. So we have a deadline for applying, and after that deadline passes, we look at how many applicants came in, and usually it's a lot more than we have spaces for.
How many artists are you expecting next weekend?
There'll be 180 booths of artists. Yeah. And we get almost 300 applications. So we can't let everybody, and we don't have space. So then we have the difficult decision making process of who gets in and who doesn't. And then we have a wait list because things are changing all the time. But we accommodate as many people as we can. And I encourage people to share booths so we can get even more people in. So in one booth, you might have two entities. And that works well because people can spell each other. And it's a communal way of being.
Do you have any artists that are really standing out to you right now?
Well, I have an idea of somebody you might like. Okay. There's this guy Carlos, and he's from LA, and he is a jeweler, and his company's called Rewind. And my son fell in love with this guy's work. Like, he took these silver quarters, and he etched them to be skulls rather than faces. He changed
Wow.
the face of the coin, and then he put it on a ring or on a pendant. And I think they're brilliant.
That is really neat.
It's really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny you
Yeah.
said I have a few skulls like tattoos on my body.
Well,
That would be very fitting.
it would be fitting for you. I like his work a lot. So I have a son who is associated with the Plug here in Richmond. It's a tattoo shop. He's pretty much covered with tattoos. So for him, the skeleton and the skull, it works for him. It's got meaning, and so that's, I think, really appealed to him. So it was nice to bring a young person in and have something appeal to them, because I think the problem with shows, ours is so old, like it's 47 years, is that it kind of is suited to my generation, the older generation. And what we have to do is bridge the gap and have it then become suited to the new people coming up. So I get people like Carlos coming in, and he can do that. He can appeal to the younger folks. So I have to keep an eye on that, because my legacy, when I'm done with it, I'm hoping the show is still viable, that it continues as a vibrant marketplace. And that means as the older people time out, we got to get younger people in there. So I'm always looking for the young folks. I go around to shows during the year and I try to see who's new and who's out there. And one of the things, to answer your question about materials that are interesting right now, is there are a lot of people who are repurposing materials and making amazing things. And you don't even often know that they're taking something that used to be something else and making it into something entirely new. I love this because it's ecological and it's very creative. And
I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've seen photos and paintings done using, your emojis on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen stuff like that. So to take something that used to be one thing
Mm-hmm.
and convert it or combine multiple things to create a new piece of art
Right.
that you wouldn't even be able to tell is amazing.
Yeah. And like you're not thinking, oh, this is made out of something. It's made out of scrap, or so what? It's great if it is, but it's great if you don't know that, because that means you're appreciating the value of the piece exactly as it is. Yeah, it's very interesting. There's just so much interesting stuff.
So I like how you also mentioned that you have to look for new trends or how to bring the new generation into the mix,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's one of the big problems with various festivals and various even business organizations or anything, that they forget about it. They get very romantic with the way it's always been, and they forget to look for the future trends or the future generation that could benefit from their festivals. And so, do you attend other festivals throughout the year?
Yes, I do. When I can, I get out and see what's going on, and I meet people, because there's nothing like actually meeting folks. So it's one thing to like put out a call for entries, for instance, but it's another thing to meet a person, see what they're making, appreciate their work, start to build. I have personal relationships with all the people who are showing. I try to, and especially want to build the new relationships. So the thing about bringing in the younger folks is it creates an intergenerational landscape. And I resist the notion of generation gap, because we all need each other and our lives are richer to have each other. So I want to bring in younger folks. Now, there are venues for younger people to sell their work. There's the Renegade Crafts Fairs. I don't know if you've heard of those. And it's, generally speaking, all the younger folks. And their aesthetic is different. It is actually, quite frankly, not my aesthetic, because I look and I don't really see stuff that I love. That's because I'm conditioned by what I know. So I have to open my mind up and realize that the aesthetic that they have is working for them and their generation. So if I want my show to continue to be viable, I better bring them in. This is important. So attracting young people to the show is a challenge.
Now, you have a website called Jen Etre Presents.
Mm-hmm.
What's that website? How do you use that website? What does that website showcase?
Well, I used to have a show called the Live Oak Park Fair in Berkeley that I took over for somebody. I did that for about 25 years, and I recently let it go. And it's represented on there. Also, my artwork is represented on Jan Etre Presents. I have Jaquita Designs, and I don't have any content in it yet because I'm just developing this line that I was telling you about that I got all fired up about when I was in India this year, and now I'm working in indigo and shibori and all this incredible African fabric. So that will come. So it's kind of just in a holding pattern, more to be revealed.
Okay.
Hmm.
And you inherited the Berkeley Art Festival
Hmm.
back in 1987,
Right.
correct?
Right.
So how did that happen? What is a Berkeley Art Festival Guild?
Well, they're defunct now, but they put on the Live Oak Park Fair. And I exhibited at the Live Oak Park Fair for some years, or 2 years, I think. And the last year I was there, I looked around and it was awful. And I said, something's wrong here. And I wrote them a letter. I wrote the people who promoted it a letter. And I said, what's going on with the show? And they wrote me back and said, we're tired. We're not going to do it anymore. Do you want to do it? And that's how I got started promoting shows. So I said yes. And I got started at Live Oak Park. And then 2 years later, I got started at KPFA.
Is there any future plans to bring Live Oak back?
No. Some things just have their cycle. You have to know when to let them go. So I let it go, and nobody was there to pick it up. So organizing shows for a living, it's really hard to find. For me, it's been impossible for me to find a successor. I've been trying to find and groom someone to take over for me. I have not been successful. It's just not something that, like, personalities have to fit perfectly, work schedules have to fit perfectly. There's so many varieties. And so I've done it for a long time. I don't know who's going to take over when I go. I haven't figured that piece out yet. I'd like to know, but I don't.
I'm sure someone will come along and
I hope so.
at the right time, and
maybe.
Yeah.
Let it go. It's one of those things.
Let it go, yeah.
Let it go.
Open your mind to it.
Yeah.
Don't stress about it.
Yeah.
It will come.
I have a really great person working with me right now. She's also an artist exhibiting at the show. So she's been invaluable in the office. Great sensibility. She's a good writer. She's on, she just gets it. She gets it. So we're blending very nicely right now.
Now, have you ever exhibited your art at the show?
Well, before I took over organizing it, I was an exhibitor for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I was young. I was 22, I think.
So you don't do that anymore, like exhibit your work?
I will. I just signed up for a new show for next year for me. So I'm going to exhibit at the Craneway at a show called Voices in Cloth, which is put on by the East Bay Heritage Quilters, which would be a good interview for you. And they do a show every other year at the Craneway. And East Bay Heritage Quilters is a huge organization, membership-driven organization. And they provide a lot of inspiration and hands-on technique classes and opportunities to exhibit to their membership. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, they're great.
Great. Well, we've covered so much. Let's remind people again, it's December 16th and 17th at the Craneway Pavilion. And where's the best way for them to buy tickets?
At the door is the only way.
That's the only way?
Yes, that is.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Makes it very easy.
It sure is.
Free parking available, free bus transportation from the Richmond BART station, correct? Perfect. So very easy for them to reach the festival. December 16th and 17th, we'll have it all linked up in the description and everything. So I want to thank you, Jen, for coming out and being on the podcast. It's been a lot to talk about. Very interesting discussion. I really enjoyed it and excited for the festival.
Thank you so very much, Mark. This has been a very pleasurable experience for me. Rattling on is like what I love to do. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at markguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.